For years now, media and politicians have been talking about a Mediterranean migrant crisis. But the people drowning are not all migrants, and the argument that most of those risking everything to land on Europe's shores are doing it for money hardly captures the reality. The word migrant is often used as a form of reductive terminology to dehumanize this complex story of human tragedy. And so we'll be talking about the difference between migrants and refugees and why it's important. So who counts as a refugee and who doesn't? Well, the answer is not straightforward and may require a paradigm shift. As analyzed by The Economist, the definition agreed upon is 70 years old and falls short of covering millions of forcibly displaced people today. Historically speaking, the characteristics of what a refugee is became prevalent after the horrors of World War I. The League of Nations established the High Commission for Refugees in 1921. After World War II, Europe had to face an even larger crisis. And so, Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was put into place in 1948, obligating states to protect refugees. The Refugee Convention of 1951 set out parameters for those obligations. The first version of it only covered people who became refugees due to events in Europe. Pretty crazy, right? But by 1967, it extended to non-Europeans as well. The Convention's definition of a refugee is as follows: someone who is unable or unwilling to return to their country or origin owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted. A rather simple definition, and one that isn't comprehensive enough. It doesn't cover, for instance, thousands that are displaced by natural disasters every year. But the Convention does stipulate some important measures for countries that refugees are fleeing to. So, for instance, a country is prohibited from sending people back to their countries if they face a credible threat of persecution. And the host country is also obliged not to punish refugees who entered illegally if they arrived, quote, directly from their own country. According to the UNHCR, at the end of 2020, there were 82.4 million forcibly displaced people around the world. Millions of these people should be covered by the Convention. But the ever-increasing number of asylum seekers to Europe and America has caused a backlash against the obligations outlined 70 years ago. Now, a migrant is someone whose motivation is to improve their economic opportunities, rather than saving their life. But the lines are murky, very murky, in the sense that people who are forced to leave their homes may also aspire for a better quality life. For example, think of a war-torn Syrian who left to Turkey and then once again to Europe through Greece. They have traveled through a third country and can be denied entry or forcibly sent back, as we have seen time and time again, despite him or her being a refugee. Another relevant example is that of southern Italy. Authorities in the media designate Syrians and Eritreans as bona fide asylum seekers, whereas West Africans are all lumped together as economic migrants. However, this classification neglects the fact that many of these West Africans have experienced violence and repression in countries such as the Gambia, Mali, and Nigeria. They have also likely faced arbitrary detention and violence in countries like Libya, forcing them to flee again. Labeling them as migrants serves as a political goal: to detach value from their life, strip the suffering of their voice, excuse their death or deportation, and lastly, to bypass the duties of the Refugee Convention. More than facts, statistics, and semantics, we must perceive the human factor. For a person to go through such long, arduous, and perilous journeys, risking their lives and the lives of their offspring, their situation must be dire. Forcibly displaced people are fleeing perils that the 1951 Convention's drafters could not imagine. Making the crisis seem like a result of persona non grata swarming Europe for jobs is inflammatory and simply not factual. The reality is, we live in a world where conflict, poverty, and climate change affects millions. Do we share the responsibility and help, or hide behind inaccurate labels and outdated definitions? Thank you guys, please make sure to subscribe and like. See you next week.